Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Deanne Barrett. We're here today with Tina Feigal. Welcome, Tina. So great to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I really appreciate this opportunity, Deanne. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I know it will be the great pleasure of all of the parents that are watching us today. Let me give you a little bit of a brief background about Tina, and then I'll let her fill in a lot of the details. Tina is the mother of three wonderful sons, three spunky grandchildren, and really her passion is bringing peace to homes and schools by helping adults to really heal their challenging child behavior with present moment parenting. So Tina, tell us a little bit about how you got started with Parenting Mojo, which is, I just love that name for your site. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to start working with parents.
Well, I was, first of all, the mom of those three wonderful sons and had some challenges with my kids. And I was always struggling to figure out how to make things better. And then I became a school psychologist. And I worked with children from early childhood all the way through grade 12. And it was a very eye-opening experience. And it just kept coming to me. If I could just get to the adults who love and teach and coach and care for these kids, we wouldn't have to have so many evaluations for emotional behavioral disturbance, which is what I was doing. So I think I would just like to get to them. I would like to go a little further upstream in my journey with parenting and become a parent coach. So I basically simply hung my shingle. This was in 2000. This is 18 years ago. And so I think I'm like the oldest parent coach in the United States. I just came up with the idea of being a parent coach. And I was in a process of training to be a life coach. And I thought, I'm a parent coach and there's nobody else doing this right now. So I'm just going to create it. That's how it happened.
I love that. And really, I feel like parent coaching, it is life coaching. And it seems like it's the thing that gets us to realize we maybe need to step into growing as a parent is that we're having a challenge with our child. And that's like the opening or the awakening that, there could be a change here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then since then, it has just blossomed into this wonderful experience of having trained over 500 people to be parent coaches too. So I really I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm now working with a company that is a nonprofit that helps children who are in the foster care system. And it's a treatment foster care organization called A New Family Services. And what we do is help kids maintain permanence in their homes. And why do foster kids get moved from home to home? It's usually because of their behavior. So what we've been able to do is help them create permanence, which is just phenomenal. We now are about to hire our 18th parent coach at A New, which is just so much fun.
I love that. And I read, it must have been on your website, that your mission is to make sure that every parent who needs a coach can pick up the phone and find one. And I feel like that is getting closer every day.
Yes, it is. It's wonderful to watch it just expand and explode. It's fabulous. And I still coach people from the general public in addition to helping with the people in the child welfare system. So yeah, I do all of it, and kids of all ages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was talking with another parent coach and she said, I work with, younger kids. I don't really specialize in teens. And I think there is something really incredible about working with parents all the way through the life stages, because I think when our kids are little, it's easy to reach out for help because we think I'm a new parent. But by the time they're 13, 14, we think, I've been parenting this kid for like 14 years. I should know what I'm doing. But it's that should, and realizing that is a transition for everyone. You're 14 years older with more experience and sometimes more of those patterns built up with kids.
Yes.
And your children go through a transition. And then I think what I always try and think about is playing the long game, thinking long term. If they're 14, it's just a few short years until they're 18, and then they'll be an adult and I'll be an adult, and then what does the relationship look like? So can you speak a little bit to and I know there are many more transitions, the transitions in parenting as our child gets older?
Yeah, and I think, isn't parenting kind of like a constant transition? Because kids change so fast as they grow and mature and develop. They maintain some basic personality characteristics, but their brains are actually undergoing a tremendous amount of change. They move from that impulsive 1 and 2 year old who have no impulse control to 4 and 5 and 6, where they're starting to get some impulse control, and then and then they get into the middle school years, and peers mean everything to them, and it's a whole new landscape. And then they get into the teen years, and their brains are not still fully developed, but they have big bodies, and they drive cars, and they can go online and do things that I mean, it's just pretty much a constant transition from one stage to another with your child. So we all, as parents, grow with our kids every day.
And I know we were just talking yesterday about that transition now, and I'm sure from the year 2000, you've seen the huge transition with technology and really navigating that landscape, because it is so different, because kids have access to so much on their phones and connectivity. Can you share with us an example? I know you were sharing, a situation you had with a parent really trying to dig into those really difficult places with our teens and technology.
Yes, it's really been a huge issue. In fact, I have a mailing list, and I sent out, I need to hear from you. What are your major concerns with parenting? Just this last week, and they all said technology. I mean, almost everybody who responded said technology. And it has completely changed the landscape of parenting because there are so many possibilities. I liken it to giving the keys to a car to someone who isn't old enough to drive, a 10-year-old. That's really what's in the hands of these kids when they have a phone or an iPad or whatever in their hands, is that they have access to so much that they're not developmentally ready for. So that puts the onus on the parents to really be in charge and be in touch with their kids, and not in an authoritarian way, like we have limits and these are the limits, but in a conversational way about, here are the reasons why it's just not okay to have full access to the entire internet at your age. Here are the reasons why it's much preferable for you to stay connected to your friends in person, your family in person, so that you aren't developing just an online persona for yourself that doesn't relate to other people. In fact, there's some theory out there right now that says that if kids only relate to others via the internet, that the part of their brain that develops empathy and compassion may not be developing, because that requires in-person eye contact, body language, tone of voice, all those things that you learn from talking to another person. If they don't happen, then the compassion doesn't happen and the empathy doesn't occur. So that's something that we have to really pay attention to as parents, really pay attention to, and as grandparents.
Yeah, I just learned last night, actually, I was out, our health region puts on some wonderful presentations, and I was learning all about cannabis, because here in Canada, that will become legalized in the summer. And one of the things that I had known was that the prefrontal cortex of adolescence is not fully developed until around age 25. And that's, reasoning, long-term planning, risk assessment. And they actually are proposing that that's extended to as late as 32. Because teens are spending so much time on technology and not learning from interpersonal interactions, that it's actually extending that they need that much more time for brain growth. And I was just blown away by that, to think of, how advanced in age 32 is, and how advanced in people's, education, career, they might be at that stage and still not have that range of skills yet.
That is just a phenomenal way to think about it too. So, I mean, the good news about this is that it opens up an opportunity for parents to have one-on-one conversations with their kids not have ever thought of talking to them before, about the importance of interpersonal communication. So there's a gift in all of this. Also, there's parent coaching. So if people struggle with having that conversation, we can help. We can help them formulate the conversation. It's not as if parents are adrift with this huge assignment that they have no idea how to handle, but I'm just really tuned into the fact that they really need to handle it. They really need to be on top of this. And so some ways to do that are to just tell kids in a family meeting setting, not tell them, ask them, how do you feel about your internet use? How do you feel about social media in your life? What impact is it having on you? So everything should be questions at the family meeting. Interview the child, to just get the sense and really listen for the answers, not to just listen so you can talk, but really listen. And to then say, I'm really considering what you're saying, and thank you very much for telling me. Maybe you don't even realize that this is kind of a new place for parents to have to go. A generation ago, nobody had to do this work. Nobody had to think about what their kids were being exposed to online. But, we see you as a mature, healthy young person, and we want to keep it that way. We don't want to have you fall into a trap of being bullied on social media, or being the bully on social media just because it feels like nobody's watching. We don't want you to be on Snapchat taking inappropriate pictures and thinking they're just going to disappear, and then they actually don't, because anybody can take a screenshot of a Snapchat photo and send it to whoever they want. All those things, these are a lot of things we have to consider. So let's together make a plan for how we keep you safe. Just the same way that you have to get a license to drive a car to keep you safe. Just the same way that you have to go to swimming lessons to learn the strokes to keep you safe. This is another area where we as parents have the job of helping you stay safe until you're an adult and you can keep yourself safe.
I love that. And I was just also thinking about some of those things that it takes years to be proficient in, when we are talking with our children when they're young, and it may take years and a very graduated approach for them to become proficient in being able to be independent in managing their technology use, whether that's the computer, the internet, the phone. I often liken it to reading too. We start with the alphabet, we start with very small things, and we do it together so that they have that encouragement. And it does take years. I shared with you yesterday, I was talking with a parent who said, we waited as long as we could before we gave our son a cell phone, and he's 9. And I thought, wow, I can feel how hard it is as a parent to gauge what everyone else has versus what our child has. And we sometimes forget the way it was when we were kids. She said, well, we wanted him to have it in case he's at basketball practice and we're running late. And I thought, we've forgotten how it was before cell phones. You hang out with the coach, you borrow someone's phone, you ask if you can call your mom. How do you help parents really get some clarity around what's the best choice for them and their child when it comes to giving them access to technology?
I think it really, your example is just so beautiful. I just think 9 is too young to be responsible for a phone. We aren't even thinking about like how it affects their brains, like the radiation that comes off a phone. There are some people who are sounding alarms about that. And just the whole idea that they're tethered all the time is not healthy for their ability to grow into themselves. So they need to like handle situations rather than pick up the phone and say, how do I do this, every single minute of the day, which people who are doing college admissions are saying that kids are coming to college ill-equipped to handle their own interpersonal issues or intrapersonal issues because they're always on the phone with their parents. So we're not doing them a favor by giving them a phone, even though all the peers seem to have them, even though you're worried that you might not be able to connect with them if you're going to be late picking them up. There's always a way. Ask that coach for the phone number, there's always a way to get in touch. You can call the school or at whatever facility they're practicing in and leave a message. It's not as if a phone is vital for human existence. And I think we're going to have to see the pendulum swing away from this in order to raise healthy kids.
Yeah, I was just reading an article about the Silicon Valley area where so many parents are in the field of technology. They're working for Google, they're working for Microsoft, and a lot of those parents are choosing Waldorf education, which is like zero technology in the classroom, and they do things like knitting and handcrafts to learn patterning and skills and the patience and calming their bodies, because the parents will say, you know, there's time enough for them to have access to this technology. And that really was awakening to me, thinking I would have assumed that parents heavily involved in the technology world would want that, because so many schools are scrambling for the technology, which can be brilliant for learning. So I was surprised to find parents who were leaning again towards eliminating technology in the classroom.
Yes, and they're following the example of Steve Jobs, who kept technology out of his children's lives. So, you know, if he did that, then we have to think. We have to really think about what the impact is of having technology in the hands of a child all the time. There's a lot of downside to it. There's an upside of being able to connect with them, but there's a ton of downside that we really need to consider and help parents consider.
Yeah, I feel like this really is a great step into talking about the commitment of parenting, because I know that parenting can be stressful in our modern lives. As much as we have technology to make things convenient, life can be so busy and hectic, and we're scrambling to pull everything together for family life and cook dinner, and it's just easier, you know, to give the kids the iPad when they're little, or it's just easier to say, okay, like take the phone and then I know you're okay. And how do you help parents pull back from some of that and really understand what it takes to parent differently than what seems to be the norm in our busy culture?
I created this phrase once called a more compelling reason, you know, MCR, and that parents just simply need a more compelling reason to keep that device out of their children's hands than to hand it to them. And the more compelling reasons are that it may interfere with their social engagement and their social development, their emotional development. They're always thinking that everything's available to them at the very instant they think that they want it. And that is not, you know, like you mentioned, patience and Waldorf, you know, that is not how to raise a healthy child. There are some issues with the blue light coming off screens and some radiation issues, and, you know, this, and some real easy addiction issues, because the young brain is more susceptible to addiction than an adult brain. We know this. And so once the patterns get established of watching screens up close like that, it can really cause an addiction in the brain of the child, which can create huge explosions when someone says, please stop now, you know. And you don't want your family life to be in conflict over the devices every single day. And so that's kind of the hallmark of whether parent coaching could help you, is, are you having the same conflict with your kid every single day? And if you are, or every other day, if you are, we can help you with managing that. We can recommend some monitoring devices where you can actually see on your phone what your child is doing on his or her device. You know, things like that. We can recommend that the devices all get charged in the kitchen at night after 8:30 or 9 o'clock. That there's no reason for the device to be in the hands of the child during bedtime. Those kinds of things.
How do you help parents who are recognizing, okay, I've let, you know, my teenager have too much access and I need to pull it back a little bit, and I'm worried about the fight that's going to cause between me and my child, and I'm not sure that I can withstand that and hold strong? How do you help parents walk through that scenario?
Again, you make it conversational. You actually start out asking the child about his or her experience, and then you tell the child about your experience as a parent. You know, you make it conversational. You don't make it top-down management, because nobody in the world responds well to top-down management. And you give the children your more compelling reason for monitoring this. You know, you help them understand, I have a more compelling reason, or a stronger need to make sure that you're not getting into any kind of issues with technology, using it wisely, using it in a way that works for you and for me as your parent, because my job, of course, is to keep you safe. I've been keeping you safe since you were inside my belly. Since you were a tiny infant, I fed you every 4 hours and changed your diapers. And, I had a roof over your head and food for you and clothes on your back. I've been protecting you your whole life, and I'm not going to stop now. I said that to my teenager one time. I've been doing this, this, and this since the moment you were conceived. You can't expect me to just stop now because you want to do a particular thing. It's not going to happen. This is what parents do. And you know what? Fundamentally, even though kids balk at what parents do to keep them safe, they feel safer if you state this. They feel a lot safer. So we can't listen to their balking. We could listen to our hearts about what we know they need. So this takes a big leap in, I got to be the adult here and take the adult view and not just leave it to my child's desires to know which way to treat him or her, but to my own adult perspective. That's really important.
I just love that, because I know, having worked with teenagers for so long, you described this earlier, they have these adult looking bodies and, have this language that they can use, and they're trying to create arguments for all the things that they want to do and why that's important and valuable. And those are all incredible gifts. And sometimes we can be convinced that they have more maturity than they do. So I love how you described it, of taking the adult view, because that's so important for us to remember. We can work it out with them, and we have that parental view where we are in there to protect them and support them. I love that.
Yep. And even if they absolutely rail against everything you say from your adult perspective, inside there's a little thing that hits their heart that says, okay, mom's still in charge and dad's still in charge of some of the pieces that I'm not ready for. And that makes me feel safe. And if it doesn't happen, kids fundamentally don't feel safe. They just don't. If their parents aren't stepping in and saying, here's my adult role in your life, and I'm not letting go of it. Just FYI, I can't let go of it, because you still have some developing to do. And I acknowledge that. I also acknowledge, as you said, all the strengths that you're bringing to being 14 years old right now, which are, and then you name them. And I also see that there's still some developing to happen. When I was 14, I wasn't fully developed. Nobody in the world is fully developed when they're 14. That's the kind of thing that can help kids get anchored, instead of like, I'm in charge of my life now, mom, go away, kind of thing, which is their naturalness. It is. And I always tell parents that once you put it in there, it's in there, whether they can let you know or not, it's in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I was working with teens, in my classroom, sometimes my students would say, can you talk to your parent about this? And some of them would say, I don't think they care. And that just killed my heart, because I thought, oh, I'm sure that they care. And if they don't, you need to find an adult who can care with you. So just as you said, it keeps them safe and helps them know that you care so much about them that you're willing to go toe to toe with them sometimes over some of those issues.
Yes, yeah. That's where the rubber meets the road with parenting. I always remember those experiences of having to just lay down the law. One time my son wanted to go to a concert on a school night, and he was on the basketball team, and he had a full day of school and a basketball game the next day, and he wanted to go to a concert 90 miles away from home and get home at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I just said no. And he's like, everybody else is doing it. And I just said, yeah, well, they're all doing it. That's their parents' decision. No, and he came after me. And I said, honey, we talked about this. Now what would you like to talk about?
I love that. Now, I know so many parents, at 14, they can have this conversation about how the technology use is working in the home. But with every increasing year, and knowing that, 1 year your child will leave the safety of your home, how do you help parents understand how they can slowly help their child be more autonomous and let go? I know I talked to a mom a short time ago who was so frustrated because her daughter said, you keep snooping on my, social media. And so you could just feel the conflict between this adolescent who's like, I just want some privacy, and the parent who's saying, you're not ready for that yet. How do we help our teens make that transition into being autonomous with their devices?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think what you do is you watch for when kids do something really responsible on Facebook or Instagram. Not Facebook. Most kids aren't on Facebook anymore, but Instagram or Twitter or Snapchat, where you say, you know what, that was an excellent decision that you made. Or someone else said something that they shouldn't have said about another kid and you didn't go along with it. That was an excellent decision that you made. And I really admire that even though your peers aren't able to control themselves, that you are actually controlling yourself. So what we have to do is be like Sherlock Holmes for their successes so that we can lay them at their feet, and just say, this is what I'm admiring about how you're handling this right this minute. And that goes for all areas of life. Whenever a child has whatever success they have, be sure to tell them, because the research tells us that anytime you hear what you did right, you're actually much more likely to do that again. So when I coach parents, I say it's not about stopping bad behavior, it's about growing good behavior. And that's a huge paradigm shift for most parents. We all think we're about to, we're supposed to be stopping bad behavior. We're actually supposed to be growing good behavior and watching for whatever we possibly can find that they did well. And over time, we're reinforcing it. We're going to see it again. We're going to see that kid grow naturally, and that we're going to see a child who feels appreciated for her strengths or his strengths. And that's an emotionally healthy kid who can grow to their fullest potential.
I love that. And I think that's true for parents too. We can sometimes beat ourselves up, especially by the time our kids are teens, and think, oh, if I only would have handled this then at that age, we wouldn't have this problem now. And really acknowledging, at every stage you have done what you knew how to do with all of the factors of your life, and to create a case for ourselves about all the positive, wonderful things we've been able to do with and for our kids, so that we can then step into the next moment feeling like we have some skills and some capability to be able to live in that next moment with our teenagers.
Yes, absolutely. Self-care for parents has really come to the forefront in my mind lately, because we do have so many parents comparing with other parents or going online and finding, like, this is going to be funny to say because I put it there, way too much parenting advice, and does it always apply directly to your situation, and it's hard to tell, which is why I love to coach, because we get to customize what we say to people to their particular situation. And sort of like something to do with corporate competitiveness has trickled down into family life, I think. And we watch other people to see how they're doing it, and we feel like we have to keep up. And it's just horrible on the self-esteem of parents themselves. So I recommend a book called Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff, Neff, just to help parents settle back into being their own best friends and stopping comparing, and really focusing on knowing their child and engaging them in conversation and sharing their vulnerabilities even with their kids every now and then, not to a great degree, but just to say, what, some days I get so confused, and talking about something that happened in their life today that just was like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was blowing it, but actually then it ended up that it wasn't that bad, kind of thing. So we forget to share our lives with our kids. We think we're supposed to be so in charge of their lives that we forget to tell them what it's like to be a parent from our perspective. And that can relieve some of the stress of expecting yourself to be perfect all the time, and feeling at sea about all the things that could happen in the world. The world's possibilities have gotten really overwhelming lately. And I think what we need to do is change our focus back to our one-on-one relationship with our children, filling it with love and listening and compassion.
I love that. And I was just going to ask you about that concept of present moment parenting. And I feel like you just described it so beautifully. Can you tell us a little bit more about how to really live in that place as much as we can with our kids?
Yeah, sometimes I have people like even wear a bracelet or something that just reminds them, take their favorite bracelet or even their watch. A watch has time on it in this present moment. Am I focusing where I want to focus? Am I worrying about the future? Am I concerned that the past is going to repeat itself? Or am I connecting in this present moment with this child? Because this is where our power really is in parenting and in life, to connect in the present moment with the person in front of us. And when we do that, we teach our kids to do that. They're watching us, they're learning from us. And we are a huge example, even if we don't ever talk about it, about staying in the present moment, making eye contact, sitting down. We don't even think sometimes that standing up and living our lives and moving from one thing to another actually really loudly communicates that I'm not here with you right now. So sitting down and putting on your listening ears and reflecting what you're hearing, and not really even necessarily solving the problems that the kids are expressing, but just being with them while they feel the problems and letting them solve the problems, and then giving them the feedback. You handled that just beautifully, or you handled that in a way that I never would have thought of, that kind of compliment, that kind of connectedness is the answer to a lot of what the world is swirling around us right now. And being in the present. Being in the present.
I love that. I heard from you loud and clear that ability to hear our kids for what they're saying and applaud them for their problem solving, find them doing things right on social media, growing with them and growing the positive. I'm seeing the plant behind you, and that image is going to help me remember that we're growing these beautiful creatures, and really helping them flourish is showing them and reading back to them all of the things that they're doing well. And I sometimes call that creating a case for them being wonderful,
Yes.
Because in our minds, we sometimes can create an opposite case of all the things we haven't done, especially teenagers. I'm not there yet. I'm not out in the world. I'm not an adult yet. And they're just yearning for that. So the more we can feed them the positive of where they are and how they're doing well at that, I just love that. So beautiful.
That's what it is. Showing them what's right about them is much more powerful than showing them what they didn't do well. It just works better. If parents are interested in what works, which I'm only interested in what works, that's what works. It really is. It's just in all humans. Like if you go into a business meeting, for instance, and you back up one of your coworkers, let's just say, and the coworker comes out and says, "Oh, thank you so much. I really needed that backup right then, and I really appreciate your support." Are you likely to support that person again? Yeah, because they noticed that you did something and they actually told you the effect on them. That's what you do. Is like, I call it heartfelt appreciation. I feel, because when you handle yourself on social media so beautifully, I feel like super impressed, because it just shows me how you are kind of ahead of the game on your maturity right now, and you're much more aware of the things that people need than other kids your age are. So that's the kind of thing that you want to go into the child's heart. It lands right here, and then it sends a message to the brain. Oh, I am successful. My parents do see me. My parents appreciate my good stuff. That's the kind of kid you want to raise.
Beautiful. I want to end on one other positive note. Tina, what's one of your favorite things about the teenage years?
Potential. And also, sometimes we're going so fast we forget they have wisdom. And we forget that their enthusiasm is a huge gift to us. We're surrounded by their enthusiasm oftentimes, and we forget we're like a frog in water. We forget what our environment is, and we just need to stop and pay attention. Take a present moment to pay attention to the fact that they are full of enthusiasm and potential and wisdom that we might not have ever thought of noticing unless we slow down to do it.
Beautiful. Tina, thank you so much for sharing your insights and strategies and wisdom. And thank you also to all of the parents who have taken the time to watch us today.
Thank you, Deanne. This has been a huge pleasure. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, the pleasure is all ours. So I just want to challenge everyone who's watching to find something good about your team today and tell them. And that will just start an incredible ball rolling of growing positive, healthy relationship with your team that will really light both of you up. Okay, everyone, until next time, be well.